Hey, today we've got a real treat. We're going to be looking at a product that is one of my favorites that I've purchased recently. This is Loke BattleMats. This is not a sponsored video. They did not send this to me. I purchased it myself because I was excited about running a game in person and not on a VTT for the first time in a really long time. The coolest thing about this product is that they have both a physical and digital copy of the maps bundled together, which is a super sweet deal that I wish more publishers were putting out there. In any case, we're going to be looking at the physical product first, and then we're going to load up a couple of the maps and the tokens into Foundry and take a look at what they look like in our favorite virtual tabletop. So let's not waste any more time with this intro. Let's start checking out the product itself. Alright, so we have here the Box of Adventure, Valley of Peril from Loke BattleMats. This comes in a really thick and very sturdy box. I really appreciate the quality of the box that came with this. And just kind of giving an overview, we do have 24 maps here and 300 tokens. Now those tokens I'm a lot less likely to use because they are those circular flat tokens that don't give your tabletop any kind of 3D effect at all. So I'm a lot less likely to use those, but the maps themselves look really good in the images that I've seen online, and I'm looking forward to getting into them and seeing what they look like in person. And again, as I said before, the reason that I picked these up was because they come with a free digital copy of these physical battle maps for RPGs. That was the primary selling point for me. In this case, I was looking for some physical maps that I didn't have to print myself, and I wanted something that would translate right back to the virtual tabletop so that I wasn't wasting my money on something that I was only going to use once or twice. So let's crack this open real quick. At this point, we're digging in for the first time. I've seen some preview images of these online, but I've never seen them in person. And as we first open the box, there is a little magnetic flip here, a little magnetic strip that keeps it closed. All right, so let's go through these one at a time. We start out with a little bridge here over a waterway. I want to point out a couple things that I notice really quickly about this map. One, I love that the trees do not come with the tree canopy printed on the map itself. I think that's really helpful. I do know that it makes for what might look like a less visually appealing map to see all these tree trunks, but I think in gameplay, the tree trunks are actually what matters to the players. Canopy obscures the vision of the battlefield, and when you put miniatures on the map, you end up with a bunch of minis that look like they're standing on top of trees, when in reality, they're supposed to be standing under them. When I see maps like this, I think that's a really good insight into how these maps are actually used on the tabletop. Another thing, the textures are really nice on this. Once we get these in Foundry, I'll be able to zoom up a lot better and show them to you better than I can here. This camera is not going to pick it up as good as what I can do on the Foundry screen, so I'll just wait. But they are really nice. A lot of detail, really crisp detail, just really high quality. There is a grid on this version. It's really light. It is visible. It doesn't take a ton away from the visual appeal of the map. I will note that on the virtual tabletop version of this, you don't have the grid, or at least you have both versions, one without the grid. The maps themselves are pretty thick. This is thicker than poster paper, but it's not as thick as, say, the Pathfinder flip mats. It does lay pretty flat, and there's a little like bump there, but I don't think that's a huge issue for gameplay. Laying it flat, it does rise up a little bit, but this is also fresh out of the box, so with a little bit more use and wear and tear on it and kind of breaking it into the game table, that may go away. I'm not sure yet. Let's keep going. The backside of this is a dungeon scene Couple of things to point out. I do like the way that the different tiles are not all the same color. You get a lot of color variation between rooms. There's a lot of cracking and such between the tiles so that they don't look uniform. Sometimes you see battle maps and it's just all gray and the pattern is very predictable and you just get a very, I guess you'd say, boring a pattern on the battle map. This does not have that. This is really nice. I like this a lot. I also like that the doors are left empty. If you had like stand-up doors, you could use those. That would be fine. There are also these little, not sure how well you can see it on the camera here, but little codes for each map that correspond to the previews on the interior of the box. That's really nice for keeping things in order, and if you're looking for a map, trying to find it. They're also relatively small and not super noticeable if you're not looking for them. So that helps when you're on the tabletop. They shouldn't draw a lot of attention to themselves. But in general, super impressed so far as we start going through these. Next map, we've got another outdoor scene. We've got some stonework here, more of the trees. On the back side, another what's probably an underground scene, a dungeon scene, I assume. Lots of variation in the color, similar to the last one. Some elevated spaces here on the corners with some columns here, which is cool. Gives some like line of sight blocking terrain there, or at least implied terrain there. The next map, got another outdoor scene, some more stones, lots of trees, a little bit of a pathway here. It's kind of hard to see, but the path, I do like that the path kind of fades to green at the edge. So if you ended up lining two of these up side by side, even if the other one didn't have a pathway on it, I'm going to try to replicate this, but I don't know how well I can do it on screen here. If you set them side by side in this way, there's not an obvious like cut here where that brown meets the green of the other scene. It becomes more of a flow between them, and you can still line it up with another pathway, and it's just a subtle fade to green, and it still makes sense that that pathway leads in that direction. I like the way the transitions between the maps are set up that way. That's really nice. I also like that the stonework typically doesn't run to the edge of the screen. I keep saying screen as if I was on a VTT. To the edge of the map, which is nice. I don't think that's true for all of these, but at least for the initial maps that I'm looking at here, they do transition really well from one to the next. Oh, I don't think I looked at the back. And on the back of that one, we have another underground scene, again with the different variations of color in the stonework. Very similar to the first one we looked at, but really nice. The next map, we have a more straight road going across the scene. These maps are all, I believe, 11 by 17, if I remember correctly. At the back of that one, we have the opposite side of the other scene with the columns and the raised areas. You could line those up back to back or on either side. This one is a little more damaged, so you could potentially even do like a before and after scene. Maybe there's a big fight that happens off screen and the players return to this one. That would be an interesting way to use the map. This is a different terrain set than what we've seen thus far. This looks like a cavern, or at least maybe the exterior of a cavern leading into a cavern space. I do like that there are little details here in the map. You got a little elevation change here. You've got some, I assume those are mushrooms, and then lots of really good texture detail in the map itself. On the flip side, got more outdoors. Here we see a little variation. We've got some elevation change in the middle, so this center is mapped as if it were raised up. Got ruins in the middle, super nice. The next map looks like a continuation of those caves. Lots of crystal details that once we get this in Foundry, we're definitely going to light up. We're going to treat those as if those are light sources. Maybe some glowing underdark radiation in those crystals. More of the mushrooms, more elevation changes. Another, what looks like cavern entrance. I wonder, these probably could be combined in a different way to showcase a part of a large cavern, but I think I would use these as the cave entrances. Lots of details here. Again, good texture. Lots of bones and things on this one. The leftover remains of adventurers who came through and were less successful, hopefully, than our current PCs. On the back, another outdoor scene. Elevation changes. More ruins from days long past. Start moving through these a little more quickly. A little less commentary so we can get on to the good bits. More underground scenes. Lots of crystalline structure there. Very nice. Their outdoor setting. Big setting in the middle, raised area. There are multiple, almost like tiers to show the height difference here. So this one, it looks like is much higher, or at least it's depicted as if it's much higher. It is still, unfortunately, a very flat map, but still, it's at least implied that it is higher than these other spaces with the number of tiers that they show in the artwork. Got a flat, open grass scene. This will work really well with some of the cutout tokens, I think, that come later in the pack that we'll get to pretty soon. Then we've got an exterior scene. This kind of breaks the notion that I mentioned earlier that the raised areas stay contained on one map. These actually go to the edge, which makes it a little more difficult to line these up side by side and have them not look wonky. But you can see here just on this map, they 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They end on the 6th square, right? On both sides. Even though they curve a bit, that 6th square is the connection point. And so that should, in theory, make it easier to tile these side by side. Because another one, where that stone formation hits the edge right at the 6th square, is going to look fine right next to it. I'll actually set that aside for a second so we can show that off when the time comes, assuming there's another one that follows that pattern. I think I saw those in the preview, though. I like this one a lot. We've got a little stone structure with some wooden walls on the exterior. A little outhouse here in the corner. That's an interesting little detail. I have yet to run into a group that can't appreciate some good potty humor, and how better to insert some potty humor in your game than to have a literal outhouse on your map. Hard to go wrong with that. In any case, these rooms are not furnished, which is kind of a preference thing. I typically like it when they're furnished, but when they're unfurnished, it gives you more reusability for the map. This could be a lot of different things. Yeah, there are pros and cons to that. Here's another of those outdoor maps with the bigger stone formation here, and it is on the 6th square, so these should be able to line up side by side really nicely and tile really well. Yeah. Another thing that I haven't mentioned earlier, but that could be a big deal to anyone purchasing these, is these are very, very, very glossy. I actually rearranged my lighting after doing the original opening of the box to hopefully cut down on some of that, but I still don't think I'm able to completely compensate for the glossiness with the lighting. There's still probably going to be pieces of each of these maps that are hard to see, and I apologize for that, but that's also just a part of the product being the product, and that's something that you may have to contend with at the table if you end up getting these. If you've got somebody sitting in an awkward position in relation to a light source, they may see a big glare and have a hard time picking up the details of the map, for example. We've got a nice outdoors campsite. These, I mean, I can't think of a campaign that we didn't have a camp at some point in the woods. And another of those exterior scenes with the stone formation that lines up with the 6th square off the side. Little waterway there, moving right along. Another outdoor scene. In this case, the road, the T intersection. And then another of those outdoor scenes with transition on the 6th square, which is nice. Every single one that we've come to has had that pattern. That makes it nice and easy to tile them and connect them back to back, or side to side, whichever's appropriate. Now here we move on to the cutouts, the different tiles that you can cut out and then add to the other scenes to spruce them up or add some variety. We've got waterways here, some rock formations, a fallen tree or log or whatever you want to call it, a cart, little pond. These look like they belong in more of the underground setting. Got like a mine cart situation that looks pretty busted up. A stairway leading down further into a dungeon, some treasure, a big bonfire, a pit, a throne, sarcophagus, and another cart that looks like it's been overturned. Here we get into some of the some more terrain features. Big buildings in this case, 3 of them, one obviously bigger than the other 2. Some little trap doors here. 2 versions with 2 different exteriors. So you've got like a stone exterior on this one and more of a softer dirt exterior on the other. And then we have the interiors of those buildings. So you can flip those over, it looks like. Yeah, so you can keep them flipped the opposite way when you've got them on the map. And players have yet to go inside and then flip them over to see the interior when they enter. These are furnished, which is nice. I mentioned when we were looking at a previous map that I prefer furnished buildings, and these are, which is cool. We've also got some ladders up and down for the trapdoors. In this case, we've got the exterior roof of an inn or tavern. And this is a multi-story structure. This was one of the things that I noticed as I was going through the previews. It looks really nice. I think there's a third one in here somewhere, although I haven't seen it yet. But a fully furnished interior of a tavern, classic D&D or at least fantasy RPG location with the roof and balcony here. I do like that in the maps that we saw earlier, there weren't many examples of times that a similar location was printed on both the front and the back. Like you might have a dungeon on one side and an outdoor scene on the other side, because you would never have those like side by side. I don't love that these are flipped in the same way, because I kind of like the idea of being able to lay these out on the table separately and be able to say like, this is the interior, and at the same time you've got a couple people on the balcony that can see down into the little courtyard or whatever. But that's a nitpick. That's not something that I should be totally hung up on, and there are ways to get around that. It's just I do wish that these were separate on separate sheets rather than the same one, since it does look like it's intended to represent the same building. Let me get to more cutouts here. We've got a little, what looks like maybe an orcish not outhouse. I mentioned those earlier. Looks like we've got a little orcish like guard post or tower or whatever. That's pretty cool. Some more interior buildings, a lava pit, some orcish style tents, which are pretty cool. The top of this building, I assume, which is nice. Got the bones of a big dragon. The horn structure, I'm assuming that's a black dragon. Super cool either way. And then the last actual map, we've got one of those exterior scenes with the... Actually, I think this is a transition between some of the cave scenes and the outdoors. So I mentioned earlier that I was thinking about using them as transitions, and this actually appears to be the actual transition. You've got that interior cave texture, and then on the outside you have the green grass with the dirt texture on the exterior. Then we have the upstairs of the tavern that we looked at a few tiles ago. Super nice. I guess if somebody was going to be on that balcony, you could represent it just with the top floor and you don't need the roof. So me nitpicking that, probably not a big deal. You just use these two and ignore the roof tile altogether if you're trying to do that with multiple people on multiple levels. Either way, super nice set of maps. As for the tokens, these are printed on the same type of paper, and they're all flat on these little octagon borders. There is a good selection here of different types of monsters. There's a good set of NPCs that you're likely to be able to use for your PCs, as well as a decent number of other monsters of various types. They do lean a little heavier into goblinoids and orcish type creatures, as well as natural creatures. So aside from a couple of dragon miniatures and giants, or I guess cyclops there with only one eye, a hydra, many of these are probably more appropriate for a low level game, or mostly goblins and wolves and bats and that kind of thing. Grizzly bears. There's a couple of minotaurs. That's pretty cool. But there are a couple of things that I would note. One, these are just as shiny and glossy as the maps. So any issues that you might have had with the maps being glossy or with the thickness of the maps, you're going to have the same issue with these. Overall, the artwork is really nice. I personally don't prefer the portrait style character tokens. I'd rather have an actual miniature if I'm playing in person or on a virtual tabletop. I prefer the top-down tokens, but that's just a stylistic preference. There are plenty of people who like the portrait style, and that's totally fine. These are my least favorite part of the pack, but are still useful, and I can see different ways of using them in Foundry as well, and we'll get to that in just a few moments. This does come with a handy little ribbon to place behind your maps when you put them back in the box. That is really convenient because if you stick them in there without the ribbon, they are really hard to pull back out. There was a little bit of damage on the interior of this when I received mine. Maybe came in shipping, I don't know. But it's not terrible. And then this bottom layer is gridded in the same way that the maps are, so it could technically be used as a play surface as well, or maybe for a dice tray. I thought and I was hoping that this would come out, but it doesn't. This is glued down or secured somehow and doesn't want to come out and be added to the collection. But in general, I'm super impressed with the quality of this product and how nice it is that you get both a physical version and a version that you can use right in a virtual tabletop. Speaking of that virtual tabletop, I didn't point it out explicitly, but they do have on the front cover where they advertise this, on the interior is where you actually find the code. You just go to their website, put in the code, and then you get a link to DriveThruRPG where you can actually download the maps. So with that said, let's take a look at these in Foundry. Alright, so let's check out a few of these in Foundry itself. So let's start with the caves. Now these are the caves that I showed off earlier that had the crystal formations and the mushrooms and things here, and this is what it looks on a Foundry screen. Very nice map, very high resolution, lots of detail here, and walled and lit. And I did some very basic glow around the crystals, but otherwise didn't add a lot of lighting sources to this one in particular. But let's take a walk around the map with our little Acra, or whatever this NPC's name is that comes packaged with the D&D 5e system. You may notice that the Darkvision on this character is actually reflected accurately in this scene, with the darker dim lighting as gray, which you used to need a module to do, and now it just comes normal in v10, which is pretty sweet. But I do love the maps themselves. These look really nice in Foundry, and I like them so far. Let's go over and take a look at the dungeon. I will admit that among the low-key battle map offerings, I do prefer their more natural scenery to their structures. I really like the textures and everything that they do with outdoor scenes and with caves more than I like their dungeons and buildings that were constructed by people. But that's not to say that I dislike this. I just happen to like the more natural textures more than what you see on this particular map. And for this map, I did grab some of those cutout tokens and added them as tiles to this particular scene. You've got a little trapdoor here that's not a part of the map, and this trapdoor does come with the Loki Battle Maps download from DriveThruRPG, which is pretty sweet. There's another treasure pile here that I added. I actually like these better on the VTT than I like them on the physical maps, because on the VTT version they have the transparent edges, whereas on the physical maps you cut them out, but you've still got the background there. They don't actually come with transparent pieces. And because they're double-sided, if you cut them so that that background was not there, you would cut into the image on the other side. So this is one piece of the puzzle that's actually better on the VTT than it is in the physical pack of the product itself. So this is our campfire scene. Again, I added one of the tiles here just to kind of show off that transparent background that you don't get on the physical tile itself. This would be hard to fit in this particular space on the physical map without cutting off one of the trees here. But on here, because it's transparent, you can fit it in all kinds of little wonky spaces without necessarily cutting up one of your trees, chopping down one of your trees, whatever. Anyway, again, natural setting. Love that the trees don't show the canopies. I think that's actually really awesome. And last but not least, let's take a quick look at some of the tokens. We have, I just grabbed a couple here. We're going to zoom in quite a bit, and you can see here a lot of the really nice texturing that's a part of these maps, but you also can see the artwork that goes along with some of the tokens, and these are downloadable with the DriveThruRPG code that we mentioned earlier. Come right with the product, which is really sweet. I don't prefer this style, just because I really like the top-down tokens. You get tons of them from Forgotten Adventures that come preset in Foundry with the SRD, and then you have other artists out there like Devon Knight and plenty of others who create these things, and I prefer this style over the token style, but that's a stylistic preference, and this artwork is still really cool and easily usable for character portraits, even if you don't use it as an actual token. You could slap this into your actor as your character portrait and be good to go. We'll take another look at this one. Here's a goblin. Again, the difference between the two. This is what comes in Foundry, just standard. And here's one of the tokens that comes with the Loki Battle Maps pack. But again, even if you don't use these as tokens, having access to this artwork is really cool, because you can still add it as the portrait artwork on a token, or use it for journal entries or what have you. I do still prefer the top-down tokens, but I fully intend to use this artwork in my games moving forward, just to represent character portraits and different NPCs that my players run into. Last but not least, we're going to take a quick look at the dragon. Now, this is what comes in Foundry. This is the wormling, but I made it real big because I wanted this to represent a bigger dragon. Because this image does not look like a wormling. This looks like a big one. This is actually from the cover art, but this could very easily fit a dragon in your campaign and use it as character art, whatever, while using the top-down token that comes standard with Foundry for your actual combats. But what do you think? I have been super impressed with this product. I love that it is that digital and physical bundle. You get both, and that's something that we are starting to see a little more of. The Shadow of the Dragon Queen or something like that. The new Dragonlance product that's supposed to be coming out is supposed to follow a similar model, and that's directly from Wizards of the Coast, which is pretty sweet. Hopefully they'll continue moving forward in that vein and offer both digital and physical products whenever we make purchases. I love that this has been out for a while and that Loke was able to pull this off before Wizards was. I love it. I hope they release more of these. They do have lots of other products there, but to my knowledge, this is the only one that they've released that has both the digital and physical bundle there, where you can get both with one purchase. But in any case, I appreciate you watching. I hope you'll leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think of this product and any other products in a similar vein that I should be checking into and trying out. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.